Hello and welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for our event on Amaranth, Ancient Grains and Modern Flair. Whether you are an Amaranth enthusiast already, just ancient grains curious, or we're simply looking for something different to do this winter season, we're just excited to have you here. So we're going to start by introducing Sydney Weldon. Sydney is Seed Savers Exchange's Evaluations and Trials Manager. If you've ever been lucky enough to chat with Sydney or perhaps attend one of her presentations during the summer Seed Savers Exchange's 50th anniversary events, you know that her enthusiasm is just infectious. So we are very lucky at Seed Savers Exchange to have her heading up our community science program, ADAPT, which she is going to talk to you all a little bit more about in just a moment. And Sydney is also going to introduce our guest a little bit more, but I just want to say, if you have not checked out Lauren Chandler's website, please do. It's a real treat. She is a wonderful chef and provides a lot of different opportunities and services on her website. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to you, Sydney.
Yeah, like Meredith mentioned, I'm Sydney Weldon, the Evaluation and Trials Manager here at Seed Savers Exchange. And so it's my job to document the unique characteristics of the varieties that we have here in the seed bank collection at SSE. I also run the ADAPT program, a community science program that we have. And yes, I will dive into that a little bit more. But let's just jump right in, get talking about Amaranth. So our agenda for tonight, we'll first talk about what is amaranth and learn a little bit about what the plant looks like, its versatility, its nutrition, how you can use it in the kitchen. Um, and then we'll talk a little bit about the ADAPT program. It's the impetus for this event. It began with a connection that formed at the SSE conference earlier this year and the ADAPT program and Lauren. And so we'll chat a little bit about what the program looks like and how you can get involved. Then for the main event of the evening, we'll have Lauren show us how to make some special amaranth dishes. Um, and yeah, like we mentioned, throughout the event, we encourage folks to drop questions into the chat. Lauren's open to uh, like a more conversation style cooking demo to get people more engaged. So feel free to drop your questions, and we'll also have time for a little Q&A after the presentation. And we will kind of end with just a couple short slides on how you can further engage with Seed Savers Exchange and Lauren into the future. So first up, what is Amaranth? What are we actually here to celebrate this evening? And my response is, what isn't Amaranth? I consider her one of the shining jewels of my garden. There are 60 species in genus Amaranthus, and about 5 species are commonly cultivated, either for their leaves or their seeds or just their pure ornamental value. Um, they typically grow 4 to 8 feet tall, and they often have these really beautiful, striking, feathery, jewel-like clusters. And they come in many different shapes and sizes and colors. They range from green to bronze, gold, purple, red, mauve, really all over the map. You can find varieties in different colors. And so this photo here, Amaranth 146, it is called Green Top, and it was one of the varieties in our ADAPT trials this year. And I wanted to mention that all of the field photos of Amaranth throughout the presentation are varieties that we have characterized here on the farm over the past few years. So if you see one you like, you might be able to request it on the exchange. And so amaranth is not new on the scene. It's been grown for thousands of years by indigenous folks throughout the Americas. And it was actually almost wiped out by Spanish colonizers when they arrived due to its deep importance to so many cultures throughout the region. And it is still widely grown and appreciated throughout the world, including Mexico, Central America, Africa, China. Hundreds, millions of people all over the world appreciate this crop very deeply. And so I'm hoping some of you who are new to amaranth will find it just as special. So why would you grow amaranth? First off, it's incredibly versatile. It has culinary value. You can use the leaves and the seeds as food. It's absolutely striking. One of my favorite ornamental plants, for
Why would
sure. And
Amaranth?
yes, exactly. That's why we call it glamaranth. Yeah, it's just absolutely spectacular. Sorghum's my other favorite crop, but we'll do another presentation on sorghum some other time. But yeah, many have this really striking foliage and these beautiful inflorescences, as you can see on the screen. Just so many shapes and sizes and colors. Um, and it's beautiful in the garden, excellent for fresh and dried arrangements. And it always has this like demanding, stately, regal presence wherever she is, in the garden, or maybe it's the dead of winter and you've got some dried amaranth in your living room, and she's always gorgeous. So, um, she's also useful as a natural dye. If you can extract the dye from the plant parts in a vinegar solution overnight. I haven't actually done any natural dyeing with amaranth, but I'm hoping to in the coming year. And then it also just has significant cultural value, like I mentioned earlier. It's been stewarded by groups for thousands of years and appreciated for its culinary versatility, and for spiritual reasons as well. So it is incredibly climate resilient. It is tolerant of tougher growing conditions, including drought and poor soils, heat. It also doesn't require a lot of resources or care in the garden. It doesn't really need to be babied. It can handle pretty tough conditions and still look amazing and produce seed. Yeah, an incredible number of seeds can be produced per plant, and yeah, thousands of seeds per plant oftentimes. So it's really versatile in the face of climate change and food insecurity.
Good deck.
In the kitchen, the leaves are edible and can be used like spinach. And for varieties that are harvested to be used as a grain, they make these tiny cream-colored seeds. And amaranth is considered a pseudo cereal, so it's not a true grain like rice or wheat or millet or the other grasses, but it is used like one. And of course, Lauren will talk a little bit more about using amaranth in the kitchen. It is incredibly nutritious as well. It's considered a complete protein like quinoa, buckwheat, soy. It contains all 9 essential amino acids used for protein building. It's high in fiber and micronutrients that are essential for keeping your health and body running smoothly. It's also gluten-free, so for folks that are gluten sensitive, this is an excellent alternative. In this picture right here, Amaranth 129, Rodale 127 was one of the varieties that we trialed here on the farm this year. And she was just the amaranth of my eye all season long. She had these beautiful bronze inflorescences and mango orange stems, and she produced just so many seeds per plant. And she also wasn't super susceptible to lodging as well. So that's another trait I keep my eye on when I'm growing amaranth. So you're all obsessed with amaranth now. You're like, oh my goodness, it's so versatile and she's so nutritious. I can do so many things. And you're just dying to grow it in your garden next season. So I'll talk really quickly about what that can look like. You can transplant or direct seed amaranth. I prefer transplanting just because she often readily self-seeds in our climate. So I've got a bunch of amaranth hanging around and I want to make sure that I know which varieties or what, but either method works. Just make sure that you're sowing the seeds shallowly, as they do require light to germinate. And it is a warm season crop, so make sure to transplant after the soil and the temperatures are consistently warm. In the garden, you're gonna want to give them plenty of space, at least 10 to 12 inches apart, maybe more, depending on the variety. They can get really big. And the taller varieties might need staking or corralling. Here on the farm, we just use T-posts and baling twine to kind of keep them upright throughout the season and make sure they don't get unruly and knock other things over. And when you're growing for seed, try to avoid high nitrogen fertilization, as that'll encourage more leafy growth as opposed to inflorescence growth. If you're harvesting for seed, note that the seeds mature throughout the season. So if you're harvesting seeds on a small scale, a simple test to test the readiness of the seeds is just by like kind of giving the heads a little pet and seeing how many seeds fall out, and then letting the seeds fall into a bucket. Or alternatively, if you want a larger harvest, you'll still pet the heads, see how many are coming out, and then wait a little bit longer and cut the plants, hang them over a tarp. And always be sure to clean, dry, and store your seeds properly. So speaking of growing amaranth, that kind of brings us to the ADAPT program. And so here at SSE, we run a nationwide crop trialing program where folks from around the US can trial open pollinated varieties from the seed bank and document their observations throughout the growing season. And so how does it work? We encourage gardeners, farmers, researchers, school programs, libraries, community gardens, anyone and everyone, no matter your growing scale, to join us in trialing varieties from the seed bank. And we have an interest form on our website where you can sign up. And in early January, you'll hear from me about which crop trials we're offering that year. We'll let you know how to register for your favorite trials. And from there, we'll send you 3 varieties of each crop to grow side by side in your own garden. And throughout the season, you'll grow, observe, harvest, and document traits like vigor, yield, insect resistance, disease resistance, and of course, flavor. And all of that data that participants submit is open access in SeedLinked, where we document our data, and this helps guide seed work at SSE and beyond. Oh, these pictures, I can't. They're so pretty. Absolutely gorgeous. I had so much fun like tracking down pretty amaranth pictures. Um, and so participants document their observations through a platform called SeedLinked. They've got a web version and a mobile version, and that's where they rank their traits, leave comments on varieties, submit photos. And SeedLinked has this special feature called a community feed. So trial participants can connect with one another to share their growing stories and tips and recipes, and just connect with one another. So this year we hosted an amaranth trial. And for each trial, we put together these trait descriptions sheets to help guide folks through their observations throughout the season. And so some traits that we asked folks to look at this year included vigor, uniformity, ease of harvest, overall. And like I mentioned earlier, lodging was something that I'm particularly interested in as I'm growing an amaranth variety. It was so insightful to see 12 varieties grown right next to each other here at the farm this year and kind of know the differences between their susceptibility to lodging and how over the course of the season they were able to rewrite themselves, if at all. And so why get involved in ADAPT? You can sharpen your observational skills in the garden and think about what it means to watch and compare varietal performance and characteristics throughout the season. Really dive in and take a closer look at the plants that you're growing. And my personal goal is that you'll find an absolutely stellar variety that performs well for you and tastes delicious and works well in your growing space. And you just can't imagine another growing season without it in your garden. And so by folks growing these varieties nationwide, we're kind of working as a community to unlock the potential of these varieties and get them out there in people's gardens. The data that folks submit is added to a global open source effort to document crop performance. And this is open to researchers, breeders, and you. So if you're wondering how a particular variety might perform in your neck of the woods, you can see all of that information from growers all over the country at any time. Yeah, you're also helping shape the future of the seed trade by helping guide SSE's decision making when we're thinking about which varieties to bring from the collection to a commercial scale and share with gardeners all over the country. So, and that brings us to the main event of the evening, our cooking demo with Lauren Chandler, which we're so excited about. Lauren is a chef and educator in Portland, and she works with businesses and nonprofits, unions, all sorts of groups to teach folks how to incorporate delicious, nutritious, plant-forward cooking into their lives to support the health of people and planet. And on her website, laurenchandlercooks.com, you can find simple recipes, additional culinary content, and I highly recommend you check it out. It's incredibly informational and really beautiful. So thank you so much, Lauren, for being here. And I will let you take it from here.
Thank you so much, Sydney and Meredith. So happy to be here to talk about my favorite amaranth. There's someone on this chat here, Jay Boast. I want to call him out for introducing us. I think that's one person who likes amaranth as much as I do. In fact, Jay named his child after callaloo, which is a Caribbean dish and what they call amaranth. So Jay, if you want to chime in when we get to the greens part, I know that's your love. So we are going to start by popping some amaranth, which is such a fun, delightful action. This is what the seeds look like. I keep them here in a jar. And popped amaranth, it's just like little baby popcorn. You can see here, I already popped some. And here's the flower. So the seeds come right out of these flowers. And these are actually still growing right behind my house. And then this is what it looks like when you just cook it with water, just like you were cooking oatmeal or polenta. We're going to pop some more. And then we're going to talk about all sorts of things to do with it once it's popped. All right. Can you got my screen here? You got the
Yep,
is the
we've got
pot
that one spotlighted.
highlighted? So you want your pot to be screaming hot. And I like to use the tallest pot that I have because these seeds are so light and tiny that they'll go flying all over your kitchen. And you could use a screen too so that they don't fly out. But I just think that it's convenient to have a really tall pot. And I like a thin bottom pot too, so that they just will pop right away. And you know it's hot enough when you look in the pot and you see that the water beads up and dances to the side of the pot. That's when you know it's hot enough. And they should just start popping right away. So I'm going to just sprinkle in about a tablespoon or so because I want the surface area. I don't want them to be all piled up on top of each other. They need to touch the surface that's hot at the bottom there. And then you can see they're just all doing their thing. And some of them are popping out. So I didn't want to use the screen because I didn't want you to not see the action. So that's it. It's as simple as that. Now I'm going to move over here so you have a little view. Okay. Meredith and Sydney, I'm still seeing this on the screen, this slide.
Yeah, Sydney, can you stop sharing the presentation? There we go. Thank you.
Here we go. Okay, so now you can see my cutting board, which I'll be getting to in a second. But we've got, and are you able to see both of my screens? Like face on? There we go. Hello. So we got our popped amaranth, and then this is the cooked amaranth. Basically, I just put it in a pot, like 1 part of the amaranth to 3 parts liquid. And I say liquid, not water, because you could use broth, You could use beer. You could use apple cider. I love this time of year cooking it in apple cider. So of course it's just going to take on the flavor of whatever you cook it in. But on its own, it's pretty earthy, a little bit nutty, almost a little malty, but you know, somewhat mild. And you can see the texture here is, you know, you can add more liquid to it and it'll be thinner. So it's just a really nice base, and you can do all sorts of things with it. I didn't want to demonstrate how to cook it because literally it's just putting your liquid in the pot and putting this in and bringing it up to a boil and then down to a simmer, stirring it every once in a while. And you can keep it in the fridge in an airtight container for up to like 4 days or so. And I like to make a batch like this and just have it on hand to use in all sorts of dishes. And I'm going to show you some of those. So, you know, yeah, I'm going to first show you how to make these crackers. So this is one of my favorite things to do with cooked amaranth. It's super, super simple, and you have the recipe. And I really think of it as a template because you can do, there's so many different versions of this. And let's see. Just drizzle a little bit of olive oil on the sheet tray and spread it out just like that. And, you know, I'm using the parchment paper and olive oil. I do recommend the parchment paper for sure, but you actually don't even need the olive oil. It does add a nice flavor and texture, and it prevents them from sticking, but ultimately they're not going to stick even if you don't use the olive oil. So then I have my amaranth, and I just take like a tablespoon here, and not getting a great angle, and I just plop it. You can just put it right on the sheet tray and use the same tool. I like to just use a spatula like this, but you could use an offset spatula or even the back of a spoon. And I get a little bit of oil on it and then just spread it out like this. And people ask me, well, can you just do the entire thing and then score it for crackers? Because that's a lot of cracker recipes. That's how you make them. But I think that I've tried that, and while it works, it cooks pretty unevenly. Like the center takes longer than the outsides, and I just think that this is a better way to go about it. And you can make them. You can still make them on the bigger side if you want to, or you can make them on the smaller side. They don't spread, so you can fit a lot on a sheet tray. You can make them thicker, thinner. You can add whatever type of nut or seed or spice you'd like to it. I've even used lentils and sprinkled them on, or you can use just like mix them into the batter. You could take some cinnamon, mix some cinnamon in, or a little bit of maple syrup. So it's a pretty fun little recipe here. And then I like to sprinkle just a little bit of salt and a little bit of pepper. I really like them just simple like this. They taste so good just with this. They have the best crunch, and here's what they look like. They're so lacy and delicate when you make them thin like this. You can see here, they're just lovely. And I'll just like break this so you can see how they're delicate when you make them this thin. But I really like that lacy quality. And then you can keep these in an airtight container for up to a week and use them as crackers or even as croutons, or, you know, to add a little crunch to any dish. Even I'm thinking about like fattoush salad, which has toasted or fried pita bread for people who are gluten-free. This is a nice alternative, kind of a crouton deal. And then if you are wanting to get fancy, you can cook it part way, and once they're just mostly cooked but not all the way, you can just put it on top of a muffin tin like this, turn it upside down, and then you have like this little shape here, and then you could fill that up with something delicate and light. This would be a nice way to serve a salad in one of these. So that's how you make these lovely crackers. And Now I'm going to move on to, I'm going to move on to making up some different dishes here. I thought we'd start with
Lauren,
each version. Yeah, we're
Lauren,
starting.
maybe before you move on to the next one, we did have a question in the chat about for that first step where you're cooking the amaranth, how long does that take usually?
You know, it takes about, I think it takes about 25 minutes or so, 25 to 30 minutes.
Great.
And you'll know when it's done. It's stirred every once in a while, but the liquid should be absorbed and it should have kind of a glossy sheen, like almost even like a little gelatinous when you look at it. And again, like you can, if you wanted to make it really thin, you can do that. But yeah, I would say about 25 to 30 minutes. The grains or the seeds are really going to kind of blend in together. So they're not going to be these like real, like quinoa is much more defined. I would think of this as a entirely different, it is an entirely different seed. So I hear a lot of folks comparing them, and culinarily, I actually find them to be very different. So those popped little seeds here are great in, of course, granolas or different types of bars. You could use them to coat things, like if you were going to make veggie burgers, you can use them kind of like breadcrumbs, but also put it on the outside and then pan fry those. They're lovely, just like sprinkled on a salad. You could have it like a bowl of cereal, just like you would have puffed rice. This is a bar that I like to make, like a little granola bar, basically. And you can, you know, whatever type of recipe you like for your bars, you could just mix it in to whatever that is. But I'm going to make a little kind of a breakfast bowl here. Or, I mean, it could be dessert. This is really nice if you wanted to mix, if you wanted to mix in some cocoa powder, a little cinnamon, a little bit of maple syrup, maybe. Okay, so we've got our amaranth in here, just like that. And then let's say a little bit of yogurt, just like you would have another, you know, hot cereal, though it's good cold too. And then let's use some apple. I always like to get a little like knife skills into every class. So I like to pinch the blade between my thumb and my forefinger and then wrap my hand, my other fingers down around the handle so that I have a lot of control. That way, if I have my pointer, it's a little wobbly, right? But this way, I'm really grabbing both parts for more leverage and stability. So this is this gorgeous apple. These are mountain rose apples that are growing here in Oregon. And so they're nice and pink in the inside, surprise. And I'm going to just chop some slices, put that in this little amaranth bowl. And then also, because of the season, I've got this apple cider syrup. It's a real treat if you get some fresh apple cider and just reduce it, just boil it, and then bring it down to like a rapid simmer, between a simmer and a boil, I'd say, and let it reduce, and then you have this amazing syrup. So we can drizzle that on. And then I have this, even though it's a bar, we could just break it up as if it's granola. So good. Yum, yum. I'm like going to be debating what I'm going to have for dinner tonight. There's going to be all these options. So that's just a nice little breakfast option here. And then I thought I would do a nice savory version too. What I really wanted to impart to you is these two different ways to cook it. Just cooking it stovetop and how easy that is, and also the simplicity of popping it and all the different, you can do so many things, whatever whatever your imagination allows. But once you have these ingredients dialed, then you can go off in different directions. So for the savory version, I'm going to go ahead and just get some amaranth in the bowl. And I sauteed some of the greens, and I use the stems as well. They are absolutely edible. Do not waste them. And if they are a little tough, you can like just give a little nibble to the stem, and you can peel the outside with your fingers if it does seem on the tougher side. But I just chopped them up and then cooked them in a little bit of oil in a skillet with some olive oil and garlic, and that's it. And they're so tender and delicious. They have like their own, every green has their own unique flavor, and amaranth greens are just the flavor, and also just like they're very, very tender. They have a really nice kind of chew to them. And you can still see the red veins, which is gorgeous. So I'm just going to put some of these greens in the bowl, and I have some delicata squash that I cooked, and I just took the seeds out and cut them into half moons and roasted these. And we've got some lentils. We're going here with not quite the Three Sisters, but we've got lentils, kind of like beans, they're legumes, and squash. And we don't have any corn, but I have read that amaranth has been called the fifth sister, or the fourth sister, sorry. And then we've got some seeds from the delicata squash that we can just sprinkle on top. But actually, first, I've got some chili oil that I'll drizzle on. And, it's just a really nice base. It's very filling and goes with so many different flavors. I mean, the fact that it grows in so many parts of the world, I always say, just like they say in the Bear, that TV show, what grows together goes together. And amaranth grows in so many places and is used in so many different types of cuisines that it goes with so many different ingredients. You could have it with coconut. You could have it with really, it is such a neutral palette to play with. All right, so one more thing I was going to share with you is making a little salad. And this salad is kind of the trifecta here. So we're gonna use the amaranth that's been cooked on the bottom of the plate. Oh, you know what I forgot? How could I forget? I gotta put some popped amaranth on both of these, because look at that. That just like brings it to life. It makes it so beautiful. And this one too, even though we've got the granola, it's still so lovely. Okay, so now we're gonna spread this out. And I wanna just add a little bit of seasoning. So I'll add a little bit of salt and a little drizzle of olive oil. Okay. And then we're going to make just a quick little salad with, I'm going to use the amaranth greens and some more of that apple, because it's just so stunning and it's a really nice contrast, bringing in that sweet tart flavor. And I've also got some pickled onions, that these red onions are just been hanging out in some vinegar and water and a tiny bit of honey and salt, so they get nice and bright pink. And that vinegar, that liquid, is going to add to our dressing. What's happening in the chat? Any action?
I see a lot of smiling faces, but no questions yet that you
Okay.
haven't answered.
So we'll get
Some questions about the adapt sign up.
Good. Little salt, little pepper, and some olive oil. And I'm going to add some lentils to this too. Lentils are my other love. Lentils and amaranth are both where it's at. And then I'm going to add just a little bit of balsamic vinegar, just to kind of echo that sweetness of the apple. And I'll put a little bit on the plate too. All right. So I'll sprinkle in some popped amaranth. We got amaranth 4 ways here. Here we go. And it looks like all fancy, and it's this beautiful green that's just growing everywhere. Okay. There we go. And then if you want, you can take some of those crackers and put those in here for another little type of crunch. And that's that. So here we go. This is what we got for our salad. And then the savory bowl. And then the sweeter bowl. And here we go. All right. Anyone have any questions?
Those look so good, Lauren. Oh my goodness. Absolutely delicious. That bowl has, I have my eyes on that bowl.
And really, again, I think I am not teaching recipes here, and it's almost a template. Just thinking about like adding something crunchy, adding something green, adding some kind of a sauce or dressing. But really, like once you understand the sentence structure of any recipe, any dish, then you can substitute. And if you understand the purpose, like adjective for adjective. So we're using apple, but we could use, what is the purpose of that apple? Well, it brings in some crunch, it brings in some sweetness, so we can think about what other things we could use if we didn't have apple, or if it's even essential to the dish. You know, even if, you know, the point of the dish is amaranth, so you want to have the amaranth. But if you're like, oh, I'm just hungry and I made that amaranth dish with all of those things, I don't have amaranth, but I do have quinoa or I do have rice.
Sure.
Great, go for it. So yeah, I mean, if folks here don't usually stick to a recipe, I really encourage you to think about it that way in terms of grammar. I think that can be really useful. And then what I said earlier about what grows together goes together, that's regionally and also seasonally. So if you think about, you know, your tomatoes and your basil are growing in the summertime, they go really well together, right? And they grow in a region that also has olives, not coconut, right? And we know that olives and tomato and basil go really well together. Pineapple, putting that in the mix would be, I mean, if you, there are no hard rules. If you love that, then go for it, of course. But that's like a nice rule of thumb. And then one other kind of guideline I like to think about is having your dish be in balance, like harmony. So you've got your higher notes and your lower notes, bringing in something acidic, something bright up here, which is what we did with the vinegar, to balance out the richer notes, like the olive oil. And the amaranth is really kind of neutral in the middle. So those are some ways to think about crafting your own dishes or looking at a recipe and tweaking it.
Great. We do have a couple of questions in the chat that I'm going to read aloud.
Okay.
So Betsy asks, are the salad greens raw or cooked? And then Mary, I'm going to tag on Mary's question as well. Any advice to preparing the greens from young plants versus the mature plant?
So for the salad greens, I did not cook them for the salad. And the more mature leaves are going to be a little bit tougher. And so I would recommend chopping them finer. That's one thing that you can do. And then also if you soak them in cold water, that can help to just kind of revive them a little bit. And I'm curious, Jay probably has more experience using the greens than I do. So if you want to chime in here, feel free.
Hey everybody, this is fun. We've always tended to cook the greens. I think maybe like chard and spinach to a certain extent. There is some oxalic acid in them, so sometimes that can taste kind of weird. It's not like gonna poison you, but probably if you're putting acid, that might like deneutralize it. But what we like to do, yeah, is chop it up super finely, get really hot oil, and then stir fry it like you would do with kale or something to the point where it's almost crispy. And then it's really amazing. There's so much diversity, like within species, among the species, like how thick the leaf is. Some of them are a little more fuzzy than others. Some I feel like have a taste I don't appreciate as much as others. I feel like the red color kind
What
of
you
brings in a
doing? What
bitterness.
are you doing?
So yeah, there's just so much diversity to explore. And then in Hawaii, there was a woman who actually wanted, this was like a more weedy amaranth, but she wanted like the immature seed heads and flowers and the leaves, and she like chopped all of that up, kind of like nutty. I'd always been like, oh no, you want the leaves, like you don't want the like flower. So yeah, lots of experimentation.
Thank you. And the greens here, I'll hold them up to the camera. Yeah, again, you can see that the pink vein, which is so lovely, and they're very tender and soft when you cook them. At least the variety that I got.
And there's a question here from Mason. What is the protein content in cooked amaranth? Sydney had mentioned that it's a good source of protein. Do you?
You know, I don't know offhand. I know it's always touted for a high source of protein. And yes, you can grow the seeds into microgreens. They're so pretty.
I just did a little Google search here for you, Mason, but it says one cup of cooked amaranth is about 9.3 grams of protein. So
All right. And Diane here asks, have you ever made bread with it?
I have not, but you know what? There is a recipe that I recently came across that I haven't made it yet, but it's for an amaranth date bread. So what I'll do is I'll put the link to that on the recipe webpage that you have, so that you can check that one out. Because I know that amaranth flour is used a lot in breads, typically not as the only flour, but mixed in with other flours.
Mhm. Great, thank you. And then Loretta asked if there's a cookbook available about which amaranth is best to use for this or that, and then Jana also asked if you had a variety that you grew specifically for these recipes.
So, as far as I know, there is not a cookbook dedicated to amaranth. And you know what? I've grown a bunch of different amaranths out in my garden. Sadly, these aren't them because I actually just took this from my neighbor's yard. She's growing it. So it's not a specific variety that I'm using. It's just what I got at the store.
And another part of Jana's comment was that they've been growing Hopi red dye amaranth and the seeds are black.
Mm-hmm.
And then Rosemary asks, are all amaranth edible?
Jay, maybe you can speak to that.
If they're all edible, I don't think any of them are like poisonous. There's definitely tiny amaranth, so there's ones that like physically you're like, oh, I don't think I want to eat that, or you have to really gingerly like remove the small leaves from the spines. Yeah, and again, I feel like there's some that are just I don't know the biochemistry, but have like a way more intense flavor, and so some of them I just feel like probably aren't as palatable. Um, but I don't think any of them are poison. Um, but I think
Yeah,
if you like, yeah, if you see them in markets or you're ordering them from a seed company, that are, you know, for eating, I think you're going to totally be fine.
I didn't want to answer definitively since there are so many. Anything else?
I'm just kind of going through. It looks like we've answered all the ones in the chat, but for everyone on with us now, if you would like to ask a question, feel free to raise your hand and come off mute. I might have some more here. Oh, thank you, Loretta. Loretta says this has been a wonderful presentation. Thank you so much for doing it. Thank you.
Yeah, this has like been so inspirational to me, like to get in the kitchen and like think of some new creative ways to bring amaranth to all of my holiday gatherings this year. So thank you so much, Lauren.
Yeah.
You bet.
And I will answer Maria's question here. Will this recording be available to revisit? Yes, we are recording and we will share that. You're also going to get an email from Seed Savers Exchange with all of the links that we've mentioned, including Lauren's website. And Lauren has a newsletter, which is wonderful. So we'll be including that as well. So yes, you can look forward to that and revisit this anytime.
Thanks for coming out, everybody.
Yeah. Oh, we've got maybe another question here. Oh, sorry, it's bouncing around now. Okay, so this one is for Mary. Would you please explain how amaranth is, well, where amaranth is grown? Explain how where amaranth is grown can be important to know because of the variable oxalic acid content. I don't know how to answer that one. Do Sydney or Lauren or Jay?
I do not know.
We can look into that. We will look around and maybe answer that in the email as well. Any hints on storing the grain? That's a question from Karen.
So I just store it in a jar up in my jar area, out of the fridge, and it does really well. I've never had it go bad or smell funky or anything, so I think it's fine. I don't think the moisture. I think it would probably be fine in the freezer or the fridge too. It's pretty resilient as a seed and as a plant.
Yeah. Here's the other one that I saw that kind of moved around on me. This one is from Nancy. I'm almost embarrassed to ask this. Don't be embarrassed. No embarrassment here. To ask this among fans of amaranth. As a vegan for many years, I've always wanted to embrace the grain, but the earthiness has been a challenge. What do you recommend to mask that a little?
So a couple things. One is that you can always cook it with another grain, and that might help just to kind of, to mask it. But also stronger flavors like ginger, garlic, using citrus, maybe some zest, because the zest is really strong on top of the juice of lemon, lime, chili, using some chili, but any of those really like strong aromatics are going to help to mask that flavor. And then I also think, combining it with some other things that are different texturally for contrast, that kind of tricks your taste buds. Even though it's a texture thing and not a flavor thing, it still can trick your taste buds into thinking, to wiring them differently.
Great. And I
Thank
know
you so
that,
much.
Mhm.
and I know Sydney and Jay, you answered some questions in the chat, but I think maybe for people watching this recording later, there were some questions around winnowing and removing the chaff from the seed. Could Sydney, maybe you just speak to that for the people
Yeah.
watching the recording? Thanks.
Yeah, I have not saved amaranth seed on a large scale. I don't work with the farm team, but I do grow it at my own house. And so I work on a smaller scale. But what I'll typically do for either celosia or amaranth is cut the heads and put them in a paper bag and hang them upside down to dry for a little bit. And then I'll just kind of smack the heads around and loosen the seeds from the inflorescences. And from there, I will dump it into like a metal bowl or some kind of metal vessel with like a lower lid, and I'll just kind of shake it around and blow on it with my mouth, and the chaff will fly out. But I saw that Jay had some recommendations as well. So Jay, if you want to share what you do.
Yeah, I think basically I've done the same thing, but I've had times where it was like either clinging to the seed or just the weight difference in terms of trying to blow it, yeah, with breath or a fan wasn't separating some of it. And so, in seed cleaner, there are like gravity tables. So basically, either with, I think I did it like on a cookie sheet, or you could do it in just something with a rim. If you kind of tilt it and are shaking it at the same time, and maybe even like blowing it too, like the heavier seed is gonna like sink towards the bottom, and the stuff that's got some of the chaff on it and a lot of the chaff itself will just kind of like scoot up with like friction, and then you're either able to just scoop off the dirty stuff and separate it out, or just keep cleaning the clean stuff. And that's like on a, you could do that on a relatively probably big scale, but by hand. But there are like seed cleaning equipment to do that on a bigger scale as well.
We got to get some larger scale farmers doing this here in the US. We got to create demand for that.
Absolutely, we do. I know. Let's do it, everybody.
Yeah.
We want the amaranth.
See, infectious enthusiasm. I told you. All right, we've got another one. And again, I know there's some answers being shared in the chat, but I just want to ask this out loud too. This is from Mason. Does warm weather cause amaranth leaves to turn bitter? Could they be a replacement for spinach because they are warmer tolerant and don't bolt? Anybody want to take that on? I can also read what's been going on in the chat.
I mean, in terms of warm weather, we were farming in Hawaii, and they love the heat. Like, people have talked about them being heat and drought tolerant. And I think amaranth, like corn and sorghum, are like a C4 plant, which means they have like a different type of photosynthesis, so they can deal with like heat and drought really well. So they're like a awesome summer green. Like, they love heat. And you're like trying to baby these other things that are suffering in the heat, and amaranth just wants to grow. So it's a great thing to do, and plan on for the hot time of year.
I do not have much of a green thumb, and it is amazing. I just like put in the seeds and voila. Didn't have to even worry about watering. They just grew and grew.
Yeah, I do a lot of I like to volunteer garden. So I'll have some extra seeds from previous years and I just kind of shake them all up and throw them in the garden and see what comes up. And there's always so much good amaranth.
Mhm.
Awesome. I think I've got one more question here before we kind of wrap up. From Carol, do you freeze the grain for a while to kill insect eggs? They've had trouble with purchased grain getting moss even when stored in a glass jar. So again, any issues that you all have seen? I don't have another suggestion other than the glass jars, to be honest, or just making sure they're in like a cool space for longevity. But well, all right, we are at the end, and Sydney is gonna I'm gonna put the spotlight on you again here as we kind of close out. Oh, that's me. Okay, sorry. I am just going to mention very quickly, and again, thank everyone for coming. I'm loving reading the chat and sharing the love, and it looks like we've inspired at least a few people to grow and try some recipes with amaranth, which is the goal. And again, thank you all for coming. And if you don't know too much about Seed Savers Exchange, we're a membership. We are supported by a membership. Right now we have our gift membership available for the holidays. So if you're looking for something to give to a gardener or a seed saver, that's a great one. It's all available on our website. We have a lot of different options and great membership perks, including the Heritage Farm Companion, which is a magazine that we send out, member exclusive growing club seeds, and just all sorts of good stuff and fun events kind of like this. So Thank you all so much for coming. Thank you, Lauren, for sharing your expertise. I am starving now. I'm so excited to try some of that. And Sydney, thank you again for making this all happen. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thanks everyone. If you want to engage with us further, you can visit Lauren on laurenchandlercooks.com. If you'd like to sign up for the 2026 ADAPT trials, you can do so on our website. I think the link has been dropped in the chat, and we'll share that afterwards as well. But yeah, do that as soon as possible. We will be reaching out about which trials we're offering right away at the beginning of the new year. So get excited. Think about what you want to grow in your garden next year. If you want to request some amaranth seeds, you can go to the exchange. That's our gardener to gardener seed swap. And that's exchange.seedsavers.org. There's some really cool varieties being grown from folks all over the country. So you can find some cool new things. And then if you're interested in trialing your own amaranth varieties, sign up for a seedling account and run your own trial in your garden, whether it's amaranth or tomatoes. It is really fun to track varieties throughout the season and see what does best for you. So yeah, that's all I've got. Thank you again, Lauren, for doing this. I had such a blast, and I think other folks did too. So